everybody. This is Amy Beth with Pine Ridge Canines, and today I'm going to share a short book review with you of Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. This book was originally published in 1984. And if you know anything about Karen Pryor, you know she's a huge proponent of clicker training. So in this book, she goes through 8 different ways to get different behavior from your dog, one of which is to shoot the dog, and plenty of good stuff in between. I found this book very fascinating, partially because Karen Pryor isn't just a dog trainer, she is an animal trainer. So she has worked with dolphins, with horses, and with dogs. And in her book, she gives plenty of examples of different species, and particularly how they're the same and how they're different. And I'm interested more than in just dog training, so I thought that was very interesting. She also shares, for instance, how dogs are different than dolphins in, say for instance, mimicking behavior. She says that dolphins will watch one another and then do the same thing, so in effect you can train one and then the others kind of come along behind, but dogs aren't like that. She talks a lot in the book about reinforcement, bribery, punishment, and how these differ from each other, how it affects the subject that you're trying to train, how they do and don't affect behavior, things like that. And I love that philosophy part of her book. I just find it so fascinating to know, like, why, instead of, you know, tell your dog to do A and they're gonna do it, and, you know, why? Like, so that helps you with troubleshooting. The book was very helpful in that respect, telling me, you know, what really motivates the dog and how is one thing worse or better than another. She also talks about contrast bribery with reinforcement. Bribery being, I do this to get the dog, an intent to get the dog to do something. That would be bribery, as opposed to reinforcement, which would be the dog's already doing something and I'd be giving them immediate feedback on it. She also said that punishment doesn't work very well because it's past tense for a dog and they live in the immediate right now. She also goes into how these philosophies can be worked out in your human relationships and even with yourself. So she gives examples like if you have a messy roommate, if you have a cranky spouse, like things that you can do to reinforce things that are positive and to look for the positives to reinforce. She gives suggestions for how often to train, how many treats to give per training, how many treats to give per completed command. She talks about jackpotting and variable treat schedules when your dog gets to that level. She talks about how to give treats to increase your dog's time that it takes to do them a command. For instance, you know, if you have a dog that's real sluggish to do something like a sit or a down, she talks about how to get that timing a little bit faster. She also talks about how to stop your dog from offering commands you didn't ask for. So this would be stimulus control. She gives 4 rules for stimulus control that really address that problem and how to nip it in the bud. She spends a lot of time talking about the ideas behind positive reinforcement and the clicker system. So she's using the clicker system as basically a conditioned reinforcer system, which is a way to communicate with a subject that's completely meaningless. I mean, it can be a sound like the clicker, it could be motion that you make, or even she talks about flashing a light at some goldfish to communicate with the goldfish. So the conditioned reinforcer really becomes a way that you can communicate with your dog, and she talks about how that happens. Something I found that was really fascinating about this book is she goes into the shaping process, and shaping is basically taking down a task that you want your dog to do and making it into multiple smaller tasks and reinforcing your dog along each step of the way. It really takes the pressure off of having to have a perfect performance from your dog. She gives an example actually of training chickens and how when you break everything down into really, really small steps, even chickens can learn to dance. So she gives 10 laws of shaping that are just absolutely fascinating. You'll want to check them out. You'll want to read them. I have tried them since reading this book, and I found it to be exceptionally helpful. And I think back to dogs I've had in the past, and I think, oh boy, if I just would have known this, it just feels like it would have been so much easier to teach the dog this, whatever it is I'm trying to teach them. And what I found it does is it keeps the dog engaged because you're giving this positive, yes, you're doing the right thing, and the dog's eyes just light up, and you get positivity back from the dog. I would say the positives about this book is that it's, for one, it's a nice balance between philosophy and practicality. You know, a lot of books that you pick up are, like I said, do A and your dog will do B, and it leaves you wondering why, and then when it doesn't happen, you're like... So I love it that she explains why. I totally enjoyed this book, reading about, you know, learning behaviors and how dogs specifically learn. I loved all the suggestions and examples that she gave of other animals and how they're the same and how they're different. I love the way that her philosophy can be applied even in real life, to people in our lives that we would like to see their behavior change a little bit. There are some things that I found were negatives about this book. Also, I was a little bit confused at the end of the book whether she was a proponent of completely positive training or if some punishment was okay. Sometimes it's just not really clear, and from what I gather on the internet, she seems like a completely positive person, but let me read you just one sentence from her book. It says, corrections can be used as long as they are preceded by a warning signal. And she didn't really go into what that means, so I'm not sure what that means. It's just kind of an open-ended, I was just left not knowing, okay, what corrections can I give to the dog? Another thing I would disagree with her on, just philosophy-wise, not dog training-wise, but she believes that punishment is bad. Her point is that punishment doesn't teach anything. It just simply, you know, shoots the dog. It just gets the problem out of the way. And even if that's the case, I mean, don't we want potentially dangerous people even out of the way just so we can feel safe, even if they're not learning anything? I do think it's a plus to society. I would just love to see what she suggests on that vein, what her ideas are if, you know, if punishment is bad. And I also would have to say, I think dogs and people are different in this way. I mean, you can't say to a dog, hey, you pooped in the house 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to punish you now. They don't get that connection. I get that. But, you know, I think if somebody robs a store and they go to court for it, they know why they're in court. So I think there is that connection there with people. One last thing that isn't a negative, I just thought I would point it out, is that her book does not talk about any specific scientific evidence about clicker training and its positives or negatives. So if that's something you're looking for, this book does not address that. I have read other books that talk about, you know, mice trials and this, that, and the other trials, so we feed them on a variable treat schedule. You know, you're not going to get that in this book. Like I said, it's not a negative, but it's definitely something that's just not there. And honestly, it was kind of a positive for me. I liked the philosophy without getting bogged down in all of the scientific information. Overall, I think this book is an excellent read, and I would highly recommend it. It has helped me to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, not just teaching me another method. And it's helped me to be more creative because all dogs are different, right? So you can't treat them all exactly the same. I put a link down in the notes below if you want to check it out. If you'd like to purchase this book from Amazon, that's where I got it. And if you get it, I hope it helps you as much as it's helped me. So I will see you in the next video, and happy dog training.